we go. Hey, everybody. It is July 29th, and we have a very special returning guest of the program. It is one Kirian Hest, who goes by Deso or Deso Games on Twitter and Twitch. He is a gamer and a very astute, self-taught economist who understands the principles of money and the macroeconomy, Austrian economics, Keynesian economics, and all things dealing with financial topics. And he has been on the show many times, helping us understand the crypto complex. Great conversation so far on Tether and Bitcoin and generally how the cryptos work. He's given his opinion on gold and where he thinks the monetary system may go next. He previewed last time that he was working on a concept for a cryptocurrency which may change how we look at cryptocurrencies. And so I'm going to give that as a little bit of a preview as to what we're going to talk about. He has written a series of books. There are 3 of them. I've read through almost every page of the books and had some back and forth with him on my thoughts. I think they're absolutely brilliant books. So I wanted to bring him on to talk about it. And then near the end of the interview, we're going to talk about where you can get the books, when that launch date will be. And also as a special preview, he will be coming to the conference as well that we're going to have August 19th and 20th to talk about this post-release of the books as well. So you don't want to miss that. So Kirian, welcome back to the program. Nice to have you here again.
Glad to be back.
Thanks for joining us again. So I think these books could be potentially, legendary, and the idea itself is absolutely fantastic. But before we get into your idea, your evolution of the cryptocurrency complex and the way that you see it brings value, let's get into the first 2 books and your basically explanation and rationale for why you want to do this in the first place.
Right. So I've basically, in the past few months, before that, I was already working on it because I had the original, basic structure idea, even in 2019. But with the experiences the past few years, well, basically 2020 and 21, I've come to realize that people have just lost their sense of what value is and what money is, what it's supposed to do in our society. Because we live in an age where money has become the end instead of the means to an end. It was never designed to be that. It was never intended to be that. It was designed to be an intermediary for trade and nothing more. Because very simply put, if I'm producing plastic buckets and you're producing TVs, I don't know how many plastic buckets I need to give you for a TV without thinking about the dollar price. It's 100 buckets, 200 buckets, 150 buckets. No one knows. That's why barter, which was initially basically just figuring that out, is very inefficient. One person always gets screwed. Somebody pays too much or pays too low. But if we have an intermediary such as dollars, you can just calculate how many dollars it costs to produce your TV. I can calculate how many dollars it costs to produce my buckets, and I can sell my buckets for that intermediary, which I can give to you. Because if I were to give buckets to you, well, you're going to need a lot of buckets to afford one TV, and you don't have the need for so many buckets. You're going to have to find other people who then also want buckets. And you're then competing with me because I'm going to sell more buckets. It's a mess of a system. That's why an intermediary is needed. And that is what money is. Now, when you talk money, you have to also talk intrinsic value. And the reason I wrote those 2 separate in 2 books is because even though they're intrinsically linked, and we speak of intrinsic value, they're 2 distinctly separate concepts. Money is very solid. It's a very solid concept. And I'm sure you'll agree with me that in my book, I've shown that lots of things can be money as long as you stay within the rules of what money needs to be, the functions of money, what money needs to be able to do, such as be able to be verifiable or fungible, that sort of stuff. Value is a bit more wishy-washy. That's why the second book is called The Definitions of Value, simply because value has been defined multiple times throughout history. And I add my own definition to it to try and more accurately describe what this value, where this value comes from, or what arises out of it. I want to also express that there's very little math in the books, and any math can be done on a pocket calculator simply because it's not that difficult. It's actually pretty easy. But we live in an era of faux complexity created by central banks, governments, all with an agenda to keep people stupid so people don't figure out that any of this is happening, that value has been lost. And that's one of the reasons why they can print so goddamn much money. That's one of the reasons why the COMEX hasn't collapsed yet. Honestly, I can admit to that publicly. I was wrong. I thought COMEX would be dead by now. But I also would have never thought in 2020 that we could get the March CPI print, the April CPI print, the May CPI print, the June CPI print. And it was looking like July is going to be equal, even higher. And no one's buying silver. The price has even gone down. You can go back in time for 5,000 years of history to any dead economist now. Ask them, is that possible? They're going to say, nope. No. And even now, people think that 5,000 years of history is wrong because the price hasn't gone up yet. It's madness. So that's also, again, one of the many reasons I wanted to write this book, because it's all connected. The reason why gold isn't going up is because there's actually two global reserve currencies, and no one ever talks about that. The dollar we know, but we also measure the dollar against something else, and that's gold. So as long as the gold price measured in dollars is suppressed, the dollar has a purchasing power advantage over gold, and with it, over every other currency that measures itself against gold. So why hasn't the COMEX blown up yet? Because when it does, America goes bankrupt, and America doesn't want that. So the powers that be have every incentive to just keep the scam going as long as they can. But we see real world effects of this scam globally. For instance, we saw the South African riots recently, right? South Africa is completely collapsing. Well, one of South Africa's big export products is platinum. We know that platinum is pretty much as shorted as silver on the COMEX, which means the price is artificially suppressed. Very simply stated, if the price wasn't artificially suppressed on the COMEX, South Africa could sell its platinum for more dollars, and they would be richer. They would be less poor. Simple fact. So somebody just had to say something. And I also figured that if I'm going to offer a solution in the third book, I'm going to have to make clear to people why this is even a problem in the first place. How are they going to understand that if they don't have the power of hindsight, knowledge already accumulated, to analyze my system with? So that's the first two books, explaining everything.
Yeah, and I think the first two books are great. I really dove into those and chewed them up. And there's a lot of monetary history there. There's a lot of common sense there. There's a lot of rational thinking. One of the things that I think you're so great at is analyzing rational thinking, thinking through something in simple terms that people can understand, but has a clear purpose and a very clear, a clear rationale for it. It makes sense. And I think it's a perfect lead up to the third book. And by the time you get to the third book, I think at this point, you're understanding the problem you're trying to solve. You're understanding, why you came up with the solution you did. And you understand why some of the solutions that are currently out there aren't really solutions. Now, that's what we've talked about a lot in the past, why the solutions, is really just part of the matrix. It's another version of the matrix, or a layer of the matrix. And what you were trying to do, I think, from our conversations, was develop something that get people out of the matrix, back into the real world, back into something tangible, and it would provide people opportunity to realize true value. So I don't know if you want to talk about the third book now, but tell us, what you did here and what your idea is.
I'll lead it in. So you're right, but I even go further than that. So indeed, in the first book and the second book, I detail all the problems that are going on in the world right now, how they come to be, and how it all relates back to the distortion of what money and value is and what's supposed to do. But currently, the world has more problems than that. And one of those things is, for instance, digital value. how are we going to apply value to the digital space? And that's a space that doesn't even exist in reality, technically speaking. It's a pure informational space, much like the human mind, because your thoughts don't really exist. You're just inside your head. No one else can hear them. So how do you deal with that? Because we do know that digital things can have value. For instance, items that are dropped in a MMORPG, a game played with many people at the same time, have been sold for real world dollars or real world value. It's clear that when people lose those accounts, they get very upset. It's clear that people want to spend a lot of their time in those video games with their friends. They're having fun. So there is value there. But how do you describe it? Because there is one little kink in the cable, and that is digital fungibility. What basically means that is that every digital file is worthless. It just is, because it can be copied infinitely at almost no cost of labor, at no time at all, and especially with modern bandwidth speeds, and it's only going to get worse. So all the definitions of value that I put in the second book first, I already destroyed towards the end of it, not because they're wrong, but because in the digital space, you simply have to implement them differently. You have to think about them differently. One of those things is my concept of virtual labor, where I detail how labor input into video games within that video game economy does most certainly have intrinsic value. It's virtual intrinsic value, but it's still intrinsic value for no other reason that people want to have those things. People want to spend their time on that. If nobody wanted a gold bar, gold wouldn't have intrinsic value. It's as simple as that. So for video games, it can be described with virtual labor because the labor value is contained within the system itself. World of Warcraft Gold has no value in Overwatch. Now, that is slowly mutating through something like the WoW token that allows you to exchange in a certain way fiat dollars for WoW Gold. But it is still limited to Activision Blizzard's ecosystem because it's of that company. So it has what I call specific utility value. It has utility. People want to do it, have it, play with it, whatever, but only if you're a fan of Blizzard, if you want to play WoW, if you like the ecosystem, etc. Gold has universal utility value, simply because we all think it's shiny. So how do you create universal virtual intrinsic value? And that is what I've pulled up in the third book. Now, from this point onward, I should mention that the books are written in a sort of narrative trilogy. It's just textbooks, so there's no story or characters or anything. But the system itself is sort of a reveal. So if you just want to absorb the story and have the reveal, I would advise you just stop the video now, go buy the books, or check in the description below the video where you can get them. And you can watch the rest of the interview later, because we're going to get into specifics now. So, shall we talk about the system? What do you want to know?
Yes, the system. This is the really, really good part.
Yeah. I can genuinely claim that I have invented the very first digital sound money system. It meets all the requirements for sound money in every single way, but the asset backing this value, you can't even speak of backing anymore. It's justified. Just like when you speak of what value is backing a bar of gold, a bar of gold. It's a bar of gold. You can't speak of backing it. And this system is justified by research. Basically, what I've done is I've found a way to combine the work units of folding at home and similar systems, which distribute a whole set of difficult to do, but easy to do, but often repeated mathematical calculations across a network. And it's called distributed computing. Bitcoin is in fact a system of distributed computing if you just look at the hashing. If you don't look at the Bitcoin, if you look at the hashing, all those computers calculating hashing, and they're all working on the same problem.
Now, I wanted to stop you there for a moment because that's true. But in Bitcoin, what is the outcome? What is the value of that hashing? Because essentially you're just crunching numbers. Does that hashing in itself have intrinsic value?
And that's what I also describe in the third book when I go through the problems of what current generation crypto have. And that is the hashing doesn't have value, right, simply because the work is wasted. You can think about it in multiple ways. The analogy I like to use is moving a pile of sand. So I have a pile of sand, I move it a meter to the left, and I get Bitcoin for it. And then I move it to a meter to the right, and I get Bitcoin for it. And whoever does that the fastest gets the Bitcoin. So that means that everyone else's work is wasted to begin with. But it also leads to the question, because you moved that pile of sand, does the pile of sand have value? Clearly, no. And in fact, I remind people in my books that it used to be a punishment to do that explicitly because the pile of sand never gains value, because it's work that is wasted. It serves no purpose. So I do realize that the hash that is found serves a purpose and that the whole verification process needs to happen in terms of security, but that doesn't mean that it's not a whole bunch of wasted energy. And
I want to comment there real quick. So
yes.
You mentioned just the value of moving the sand. It doesn't add value. No. And that's essentially the concept of money changers. You know, the old Bible parable about Jesus throwing the money changers out of the temple, because the money changers, or the bankers, we call them, will move money around to take money for doing that, but they don't create their own value. They take money for being the movers and creating this complex system, which requires people to move things so that they can siphon off value off of the top. And isn't that analogous to essentially what the Bitcoin mining is?
Yeah. And even moving the whole thing to the digital space doesn't help, because let's say that it costs a barrel of oil to generate a Bitcoin, or a barrel of oil to mine a gold bar. Well, let's say, even if you think the Bitcoin has value, let's say that with one barrel of oil, I mine a Bitcoin, and another barrel of oil, I just set on fire. No reason, not for heat either, just do it in the desert. You know, there's plenty of heat already. So what's the value of oil then, of the barrel of oil? Well, when I set it on fire, clearly it's wasted. So the value isn't even zero, it's negative, because you cannot use that barrel of oil on another Bitcoin, because, you know, it's wasted. That's also the reason why Bitcoin isn't backed by energy, because you can't trade the Bitcoin back for the energy you put into it. You're not calculating lumps of coal here. If you want to transact the Bitcoin again, you need another barrel of oil. So if you use a barrel of oil in a productive use, it's not wasted, and you use it on a non-productive use, it's not wasted. And the value of Bitcoin is contained within the network. And that's also why I explain digital fungibility and I go a lot into general digital stuff, is because you have to understand that supply and such doesn't matter, because you can just fork the entire Bitcoin. You can just copy the entire chain. And I know people said that you can't copy the network. Well, that's exactly my point. The digital software itself doesn't have value. It's the network that does have value. So the question then is, what does the Bitcoin network do? Well, it expends a whole fuckload of energy to find one hash. Does that have value over traditional systems that can already do the same thing at a much lower energy level?
No.
And I say no. Now, Bitcoin's use case, and I'm not ignorant to it, is, what's Satoshi Nakamoto, whoever the hell that was, enshrined within the first block, and that is, you know, to liberate money and to make it free. So that's the trustless, decentralized aspect. However, also with that aspect, there's still the use case, like it has to be value justified. And the problem with Bitcoin's use case is that it's basically bad government. So, because if you assume good government, then there's really no problem with a gold standard, with fiat-backed money, with debt as money, basically still debt as money. Now, that system is just incredibly stupid, will always blow up. But the other ones, even pure fiat that's unbacked, isn't the problem with a good government, because they just won't print more than they take in with taxes. And effectively, then you have deflation, because all you have is the intermediaries backed by nothing. But as soon as you assume bad government, then what is stopping the bad government from banning the Bitcoin? And as we found out recently with China, absolutely nothing. So that is one of the problems with Bitcoin that I've solved in my books. And this is what this is also what I want to make clear, that I'm not anti-Bitcoin per se. I'm just against its current implementation. I think it's madness to think that a first generation tech of the first invention of the stuff is the savior. What first generation tech do you know that's still used today? All right.
No, nowhere. Not the internet,
Nowhere.
Not anything, not computers.
Eventually something better is going to come along.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to keep innovating, you have to keep thinking, and you have to name problems and solve problems instead of going out of their way just to say price is going up. What's the big deal?
Mm-hmm.
Well, now we're in a bubble. Bitcoin's already halved. A lot of people are already stuck. Well, I pray to God for them that it's going to go up. But if it's going to go back up to 65K, that just means there's even more greater fools that are going to lose the money later, because there's just no value there. I described that thoroughly in my books. If you don't agree with any of my arguments here, you can buy the books and you can argue with the about 150,000 words I've written there. All right. So I've solved that problem very simply by redirecting the work that needs to be done for Bitcoin. I understand why the work needs to be done. It's because of the 50% security rule and all of that. In my system, it doesn't really even apply anymore because I've changed it to the point where it's a pseudo round robin. So rather than have 50% of computing power, it goes through a list of people. And if the first one has 99% and the 1% is divided across the rest, well, it's all nice and good. But it just means that the first one in line is going to spend a heck of a lot of time doing research calculations, and the rest is doing very little research calculations, but they're all joining in on the financial side. Mm-hmm. So you still have that decentralized aspect. You have a lot of people, but at the same time, you also have the work that needs to be done for proof of work, which is now transferred to the research network. And the amount of time that people spend in the research queue or on the research network varies per speed. So the faster you are with the initial calculations, which is still just traditional Bitcoin with artificial difficulty and everything, but it now becomes a tender offer. And if you're just really fast, you spend more time in the research network and you're compensated per work unit. So it doesn't matter that you're spending more time on the research network. If you're doing more work, you get a bigger payout. Mm-hmm. So to bring this all down to a less abstract form, to a more comprehensible analogy, the way Bitcoin is now is basically a guy standing outside of a building handing out Sudokus. You solve the Sudoku, you get a payout. Mm-hmm. Obviously, everyone wants to do this. So as more and more people gather around him, the Sudoku's difficulty goes up. And you also have to verify the last person's Sudoku. That's the blockchain. Then the whole trick is that it's easier to verify a Sudoku than create a new one. And therefore, you can always outrun the transactions and the system will be safe. Mm-hmm. Basic idea of blockchain. Now, the problem with this system is if enough people put their brain power together to solve the Sudoku twice before someone else can solve theirs, you basically can double spend, you can play with transactions, you own a network. Mm-hmm. What I have done is I've basically picked up the guy and I've put him next to a racetrack. He still does the same thing. He gives out Sudokus, but they're a lot easier to solve now. So there's a crowd of people around him, somebody solves the Sudoku, but instead of getting a payout, what now happens is he gets a ticket. And what the ticket allows him to do is it allows him to run laps on the racing track that's behind him. No one else can run there, only if you get a ticket. So he immediately turns in the ticket, starts jogging. Now, this means that that person that's now running around the track is no longer available to do a Sudoku because he's running, he's doing work, he's busy, his CPU is occupied. This means that someone else can now solve the Sudoku. And because it's still easy, does it really quickly, gets a ticket, starts running out of the queue. Because these Sudokus are now really easy to do, you can also add more than one verification step. You can just say, well, you have to do 10 or 100 or 1,000 verification steps. And you can even scale it because the more people that are going around you, the more people that you can have Sudokus, do Sudokus before you run out of your stack of Sudokus. Because every once in a while, the guy generates a new stack of Sudokus. It goes down as people solve it and start running on the racetrack. And then at some point, it refills again and starts reducing again. So these guys running around the racetrack are doing research stuff on the network. And if they don't complete their laps, they don't get paid. It's that simple. That's the incentive here that keeps everyone in check. Simply because if you do the financial transactions, you're wasting energy. Like, you're not going to get any money for it. But the financial transactions are now basically just a bonus that you get for doing research calculations. Because the research calculations are generally hard to do. It also means that CPUs and GPUs can be used again, everyone at home, because, you know, the ASIC industry killed that. But in this system, it can happen again because people who are slower with computers just spend less time in a research network. And they also get less payout because of it. So it's all fair. It's all labor justified. If you have a faster CPU, you get to do more work. And, well, there's just so much more to the system. But I suppose the most important part is that I've automated everything, including inflation and deflation. I'm pretty sure pretty much anyone on your channel viewing this video doesn't think that inflation and deflation can be solved. But I've already done it. It's possible. It's not just possible to have inflation and deflation be healthy. No, you can solve this. You can automate it. And my system, well, at the very least, attempts to do that in a very intelligent way. Whether it'll work, time will have to tell, but it's pretty close.
So talk about, let's recap what you said. The puzzle gives you the ticket. The ticket allows you to do the research. Research is fairly compensated by the amount of work done. You finish the research. If you finish, you get paid out. And then that's your value, right? And then you can use that value for other things. So you've created value from value. You've done research, which leads to the greater good of man, supposedly. And then now you've created a monetary unit out of that.
Yes. And the reason why it works is because of a new concept that I've called value transference. And that is the idea that money does not have to be transacted. The whole idea about money's transacted and never lost isn't to preserve the money. It's to preserve the value in a time where money was value, gold coins. And then the value is locked inside of the gold coin and you exchange the gold coin and you're exchanging value. But in our modern digital era, that doesn't need to be the case anymore. So effectively, currency transacted equals currency transacted plus good can also be currency destroyed equals currency generated plus transacted good. To put it in a very simple way, if you've got a pair of sneakers you're selling and I'm willing to pay $100 for it, in our traditional system, I just give you $100, you give me the sneakers, done, transaction's done. But let's say that you're standing next to a vending machine and I'm standing next to a vending machine. I want to buy your sneakers and you're still charging $100 for it. So I put my $100 into my vending machine, shreds it. Can't possibly be used anymore. Burns it, it's gone. At the same time, your vending machine prints you $100. Has the value of that $100 been lost? You started with 100, you ended with 100, you still have 100. You can even combine it. Let's say your sneakers cost $200. I transact 100 to you, I put 100 in the machine, you pull 100 out of the machine, you still have $200. There is still 200 in the money stock in the system. Nothing has changed. And with digital items, we can generate and destroy them at will continuously. In video games, it's already happening because the WoW gold that you earn isn't actually gold or anything. It's just a number in a database that gets increased or decreased. Nothing drops. It's just that your personal gold number in your own personal character database gets increased by 1 or decreased by 1.
And so essentially what you've gotten rid of, going back to earlier point in the conversation, you've gotten rid of the incentive to be the money changer and to shave money off the top, which is what all the banking systems are designed for, is to shave money off the top, make it complex, manage it, be the official managers through bad government, then make policy in your favor, shave money off the top just for moving it around.
Yeah.
But now you've gotten rid of that incentive to be that middleman. That system is basically self-supporting. You don't need that anymore. You don't need the money changers.
No. And even better than that is that, as I said before, if you want to get rid of the system that we have now, fiat, and the money is debt and something, you can't just come up with an algorithm stable coin or something like that and hope it works. The powers that be are never going to give up the system that they have now. Right. And you can include gold in that because the central banks have got a lot of gold in the vaults. So you can be damn sure they're never going to let go of it.
And they suppress it actively for the public, so it doesn't have the same value to the public. So there's no incentive for the public to buy it and to store it. And
whatever grip you try to get on it, like recently we saw with the LBMA granting themselves an exception.
Yeah.
we need something better. And there's one downside to gold, and that is it doesn't bring income. That's the one thing gold doesn't do. You dig it out of the ground. It contains the value that you had to spend on it to get it out of the ground. And it also contains the value of being a bar of gold. So you can do the things that you can do with a bar of gold. But other than that, nothing is added. It doesn't magically grow more molecules or something. But research as a...
the return on investment, if we put it in financial terms, all the research you do over time has a return on investment. It creates value.
Yeah, it creates value. When you think about it, all advancements of humans in terms of technology or even socially have come from improvements to quality of life. How do you get improvements to quality of life? You have to do research. You have to look into things. You have to combine two thoughts that were never combined before and slapped into something new. And that's how we get new things. These days, a lot of that research is done with mathematical calculations. And with my system, I've basically been able to integrate it directly into the currency. And if you want to get cheap research, you have to apply economies of scale. And there is no bigger economy of scale than the currency itself. And the way I've done it with value transference means that the currency itself now counts as a raw research. It counts as a digital commodity. It's not fiat, it's value justified. Sure, you don't have the research contained within the single coin, even though the research is contained on the blockchain. But as I've described in my virtual labor article, if you want to talk value in the digital space, you have to think in terms of value contained in the entire system rather than value contained per currency unit.
Right.
So it's all the currency units together that have value, but it's not any specific currency unit in which you can say this has X amount of value because you can do X with it. Now, it generated research, and that research either was or wasn't beneficial. But here's the beautiful thing of this. When you calculate a Bitcoin and you go through 1 trillion hashes and only one is right, the rest doesn't have any value because it's wasted. They weren't the right answer. If you do research and you get the wrong answer out of it, there is no such thing as the wrong answer in research.
That has value because every time you do a unit of research, you're getting closer to the solution. So if you look at what I think it was Einstein who said, you research everything until you find, you find all the failures, and then whatever's left over is the real answers to truth. So to get to the truth, you have to make all the mistakes, right?
Yes. 99% of all human progress, if it isn't more, has been iterative. Now, as I explained in my book, and as I show with the system, revolutions can and do happen from time to time, but they're short-lived, and after that, it's back to iterative progress. And that's also where the vast majority of revolutions come from. The lead-up process is very iterative because if you want to associate new thoughts, you need to have a lot of existing thoughts to associate with each other. And you're going to make a lot of connections that a lot of people already made, so it takes time as well. But with this system, I've done it. And I even go beyond that. Yeah, I never stop. Just to go back to what you said about the money exchangers, I'm not only going to chase them from the temple, I'm going to build them their own building. Simply put, when I say that I've written this book for everyone, I do mean everyone. Dollar bulls, bond bulls, gold bugs, crypto cultists, traditionalists, even the people at the Fed. I would be honored if they read my books. Simply because I don't think that a solution will work if it excludes someone. Even the people you might not like the elite or the Fed or something. Well, like it or not, they're still in control. So if you can either go with a civil war or you can get them to agree with rationality. So I'm trying to get them to agree with rationality to show that all of this is very rational. Now, just in case they don't agree, after I developed the base system, ran into a problem. And that is simply that decentralization has a speed limit. And I don't think anyone realizes because no one's ever perfected decentralization before. And that's the speed of light. When you think about it, it's very simple. An electric current that has to travel from my PC to your PC will never be as efficient as an electric current that can stay within the same silicon chip. Because, it's a much far shorter distance. So when I think about the shortest ping I've ever had in Counter-Strike, it's about 12 milliseconds. Let's say it's 10. Well, 10 milliseconds fits 100 times in 1,000 milliseconds, which is a second, which would put the speed limit or the transaction limit of decentralization at 100 transactions a second. And it just can't go faster. You can calculate a whole bunch of transactions and send them over at once, but that's going to cost more data. More data is going to cost more time to send over. Eventually, that's going to hit a speed limit too.
That's the limit of things like the Lightning Network in Bitcoin, and Bitcoin's ability to validate transactions per second is largely, ultimately, even in the new iterations like SV, limited by the speed of the network and the quality of the networks that we have, which is also sort of a flaw.
Yeah. And I just barreled through that literally within 15 minutes of perfecting my design, because once knowledge becomes hindsight, it becomes very powerful. And I realized that because of the properties of the base network, where research is fungible and nobody knows what research anyone is doing, you just take the work that is offered, you can also use the base network to verify the blockchain itself. And if you can pay into the research network, because that's where the price comes from, the researchers set the price with what they pay for the research, and it just transfers to the miners with some modifications, but you can read about that in detail in the books. God, I forgot where I was going with this. It's all very complex. Right, validating the blockchain. So when you have the ability to independently verify the blockchain and it be trustless, then you effectively have mathematical forced audits. Because you don't really need the verification at the very second of transaction. If you can do the verification behind it, like a second later, or 2 seconds later, 3 seconds later, it's still fine. Because, if even if some large company like Visa would go rogue, you would basically verify them after a minute, and you could split the blockchain before the moment they went wrong, and nothing much will have gone wrong. Like, some transactions will have failed, but you can just do them again, and we can just continue. So I've developed a second trustless layer that, through a new functionality called distributed functionality, allows for centralized payment processors which are still trustless. I've basically invented a trustless version of Visa, PayPal, and they're all interlinked, so it can even compete with the traditional banking system. It's the highest form of transactional speed because everything is centralized within the same computer chip, yet it is purely trustless because, again, doing the financial transactions alone doesn't give you a payout. You need that research work to also be done. Right. So how I've solved that with distributed functionality is you have a wallet that connects to a central processing node. It goes through a trusting verification process, which calculates their speed. So they basically have to do a mini blockchain calculation, which the central node generates. That means that this node knows the speed of the wallet and knows how much research it needs to assign to it. And that means it can use its tender offer, which the wallet would normally send to the blockchain. The central node can tender on the connected wallet's behalf. So the more wallets that are connected, the more offers that can be tendered, and the more money the payment processor can earn in the end. It's still trustless, because if the wallet stifles this trustless node by not paying out, the central node simply bans the wallet from the network, and it's just completely gone from the entire network, because the central node weighs heavier than a wallet. At the same time, if the central node is screwing over its connected wallets, we can verify that with forcing central nodes to audit their blockchains. Now, the way I've already imagined the base network to work is not as such with a blockchain, but more with a keychain. So normally you just have a blockchain, which is a line of blocks which verifies every transaction after another. But in this system, you have a blockchain with, out of every block hangs another chain, which is the key. This combines the research wallets with the single wallet that ordered all the research, which is also where a lot of security comes from, because all the research is done by a lot of different miners who only know that one bit that they're adding, while the research wallet that orders it gets all the connections to it, so it receives the complete research. No one else can see that research, because no one else has any need to go into that wallet aside from their own blocks. Now, with the second layer system, you can basically go one level further, where you have the blockchain or the keychain, with the keys hanging off it being either research or a little bespoke blockchain of that central node. That then does the transactions, the financial transactions, and the research transactions hang off of it like horizontal keychains. So it's a key on a keychain. I have that as well. I've got a large keychain and a little keychain with 4 separate keys on it, you know. And because we have the research network to verify those blockchains, the central node is forced to pay into the research network to mathematically verify the blockchains that it does, which are the mathematical audits. And this is even value justified by the fact that connected wallets to central payment processors pay a small fee, which I'm calling opportunity cost. Get used to it, kids. Which basically means that if they get a payout of 100 Recoin, they have to pay, say, 1 Recoin to the central processing node. And every so often, the central processing node has to verify those blockchains, at which costs them 0.8 Recoin, for instance. That pays for verifying their bespoke blockchains. It makes sure that everything stays trustless. And because they get 1 Recoin in fee and the research costs them 0.8 Recoin, it's actually still profitable to be a payment processor. It scales from 1 to infinite. Simply because if you have one wallet with one wallet connected to it, that central processing node can do 1 tender offer, and it gets the payout of 1 research. But it also costs the energy of only doing 1 tender offer, because the central node doesn't do any research itself. Therefore, as long as that first fee is profitable, you can be profitable with 1 connected wallet, or 2, or 2,000, or 2 million.
So it scales.
It scales beyond the banking system.
Up and down.
Yeah.
All right. So I think we're just about out of time for this one. There's so much more to the system I want to go into, because there were some challenges I posed to you that I want to talk through. And then we came back and forth on those. And I think you're explaining that to me and also making some adjustments helped. So I want to get into that. Maybe we'll do that at the conference, August 19th and 20th, Money Metal Summit. We'll get into some of the challenges, because you have to challenge things, you know, challenge ideas to make sure they're going to stand up.
I welcome it. I welcome any sort of criticism and such, even if it's not constructive. If you just want to rag on it, but just know that if it's emotional, you're going to look stupid, because I've really put a lot of thought in that. I wrote 150K words on it. I wrote 2 books specifically just to explain the 3rd book. So be prepared. And I am more than willing for anyone to bring it at the conference. I think that's a good idea to talk about the challenges then, because other people have read the books. Other people have thought and discussed about the system. and maybe they come up with challenges that you and I can't see right now.
Yeah, and through challenges is where you'll gain acceptance, because as people challenge and we reason through those, they're like, okay, it generates acceptance. So a couple of minutes left. So the books aren't quite out yet. They're coming out. Where can people get access to them? How do they do that?
So I don't know when this video goes live, but on August 1st, the books go live. You probably in your video description, if you can add the book links that are in my bio on Twitter as well. In my bio on Twitter, there are 3 universal book links. If you click on them, you get to see the stores where they're already published. And if you see your favorite store, you can get them there. Amazon doesn't do pre-orders, I found out. So the books will be published on August 1st on Amazon on the Sunday. Yeah. And then you can just buy them there. They're just ebooks for now because I can't get them in print yet. I'm using a aggregator service called Draft to Digital. They do have a print on demand program, but it's in beta. So I'm in a waiting list. But you will agree with me, because of the importance of this information, I didn't want to wait for the print books. I just wanted to get it out there because honestly, the amount of money that's already been printed and the hole we've dug ourselves into is already too big.
There's no time to lose, essentially. That's the thing with there's no time to lose to get this idea out there, because what is coming in wealth destruction is going to be phenomenal. And what is coming in terms of what the elite want us to accept after that is not so nice, right? So we need to get the idea out there about a nice system that we can all, that we can all get into and will provide value for everybody.
Yeah. So, I just didn't want to waste any time on that. I wanted to get the knowledge out there. I wanted to get people discussing it. And I wanted to, most of all, show to people that there is a way forward. There is still hope, real hope. And I just want to say this. This system scales so well that it would even work as a currency, a global reserve currency for the Federation of Planets. I'm not joking about this.
Star Trek, essentially, right?
I've genuinely figured out how the economy of Star Trek works, even with infinite replicability. You can invent replicators. My system still scales, still has value, still works. Yep. Across planets and galaxies. It's absolutely insane. I'm not lying. I'm not exaggerating even. This is as far as I can go. And that's why I'm bringing the books out now, because I'm done. This is taking everything out of me. And I now need the mind of the planet to look at it.
Well, thank you so much, Kirian, for being on. Like I said, we'll put the links down there for people to buy the books. And do you have the link available now for Amazon, even though you can't buy it yet? We can put the link in there?
No, the link, well, after August 1st, you can put the link in there.
Okay, we'll put the link in. We'll send it out to our email list as well and put it on social media. And then wait for the conference, not 19th and 20th. You guys order your books, read through it, come to the conference, ask Kirian some questions. At the conference, we'll have, like a live Q&A session. We can go over more there. All right. Thank you so much, Kirian. We're going to wrap it up. We have to run to another meeting, but
don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Deso Games, and on Twitch, Deso Games as well. I stream about finance and such, and I'm very active.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kirian.